What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Angel. Welcome to Universal Strength, where we transcend today for better tomorrows. In today's video, what I want to do is take the time to talk to you about functional training and whether or not that's even something that exists. So what I got going on today is I've got some pre-recorded exercises that I've done, or some workouts that I've done, and I'm just going to overlay them here and there throughout the video, and I'm going to try out a new format once again just to figure out if this is something that people really enjoy. So anyway, the topic of today is actually called functional training, and this is something that you hear in the industry that a lot of people find in every fitness magazine, there's someone out there that's promoting the belief that functional training is something that you can do in order to be able to be a more functional human being in your daily activities. Now, one thing about these functional training programs is that they tend to be programs that have you doing things like standing on a half medicine ball on one foot with a weight in the opposite hand, and you're balancing yourself out trying to do a squat. So you're just all over the place essentially. Now, what's funny about this is that in our daily lives, everything that we do is on a stable surface. I mean, how often do you find yourself ever taking that sort of pose or having your body on that sort of terrain? It just doesn't exist. And if it does, it's like you're walking a tightrope, or you're walking across something that is not very structural, and I mean, obviously, is that very safe? So once again, is this something that we're doing in our daily lives? I would say 90% of us are not experiencing that. Most people in life, what they do end up experiencing is they go to work, they spend 8 hours in a chair, and then they get out of work to go for a walk or a hike, or maybe they just go to the beach, or maybe they just come home and sit down and do absolutely nothing at all, to also once again maybe go to the gym and actually train and do physical exercise. Which, I can get into another little tangent on the concept of exercise versus training, but I'll save that for another video. Now, the thing that I really want to set forward here about functional training is that how do you even define functional training in the first place? Now, if you have somebody that's 50 years old who is morbidly obese, who hasn't lifted any weights or went out, let alone even gone for a walk without a walker, would performing a squat be the most functional thing for that individual to do? Or would just learning to go out for consistent walks and watch their diet be the most appropriate way to approach training? So how do you define what is functional to a person who's like that, or for a person who's been playing NFL for the last 15 years and knows how to use their body? The approach to what would be quote-unquote considered functional is going to be completely different. The training modalities are going to be completely different. And this is what brings me to specificity. Specificity is essentially just going to define it as something that you do on a repetitive basis is ultimately what you're going to be good at. So for example, when I was being a very, very neurotic person in regards to my fitness, I used to go off and do a lot of running. Now, I would go out for a 6-kilometer run that I would run twice. So in total, it would be about 12 kilometers. On the first run, it would be just a general jog. It wasn't anything like that. I wasn't trying to push the envelope or do anything insane. But then on the second jog, I would try to jog it for time. Now, at the beginning, I would just go out there and do the jog or do the run. And I would push myself as hard as I could and just take breaks when necessary. And over time, what ended up happening was at 5 foot 10 and a half, I was able to get my time all the way down from, say, 27 minutes all the way down to 18 minutes for one 6 kilometer run. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if you look around on the internet, you're going to realize that was actually really fast. But what was really frustrating for me at that time, I was about 20, 22. What was really frustrating for me at that time is that then if I went off and I ran a flight of stairs, say 6 stories, I would be winded. I would be tired. And it's like, why is it that for somebody who does deprivation sprints and can run a 18 minute to 16 minute 6 kilometer, why is it that I'm super tired doing something so simple? It didn't make sense. And that's where I started to learn about specificity. So then it ultimately comes down to how do you bring up functional training when you're only ever as good as what you practice, right? So if you find that on your daily life you're not performing a balancing act, for example, maybe you were a tightrope walker and you wanted to be able to carry a 50-pound bag on your back without getting tired, well then yeah, you'd want to practice said activity. Now, you probably wouldn't want to do it on a Bosu ball. You'd want to do it on your tightrope line, because at least then the environment is equal to what it is that you're trying to learn. So this is where functional training just kind of becomes this catchy word that doesn't really mean anything. Now, what I think that everyone should be pursuing when it comes to exercise is trying to prevent hereditary diseases like muscle wasting because of lack of activity. One of the problems that we do have, pardon me, got a hair in my mouth, endless cats. One of the problems that we do have is we have a large component of people who spend a lot of time in their chair, and then they go home and they spend a lot of time on the couch or playing video games or whatever. And as they age and they don't use those muscles, they become weaker and weaker, and thus, they become more limited as time goes on. And this is something that is highly avoidable with just putting exercise like strength training. I want to say training instead of exercise. And once again, I'll save that for another video. Just putting training into your program and putting it into your lifestyle and strength training yourself. So then that way you avoid any sort of hereditary issues in regards to muscle wasting, thus making your life a little bit more comfortable and a little, you age a little bit more gracefully, and hopefully have just a healthier, happier life experience on that aging process. I think that one of the things that I'm beating around the bush about here is that there is really no cure for aging. There's just ways that we can, or just things that we can implement in order to have an easier time as we go through this last few remainders of our lives. I think that it's a big illusion that we try to sell people, or that, not myself, but just the industry has tried to sell people, that, if you do all of these exercises and do these programs and rub this cream on your face and buy this hair conditioner, you're going to avoid all of the aspects of aging. You're going to look better. And instead it just sounds like, to me, a whole bunch of people not willing to accept the truth and find the beauty in the process of aging. Once again, I save that maybe for another video and rant away on that. But what we can do is we can definitely create a better environment for being stronger human beings no matter what age we're at. So, for example, the spinal cord hates having any sort of force put upon it. So, for example, when we load up the barbell for doing a barbell squat, the spinal cord right away will signal to the body in regards to protein synthesis and other hormones and things like testosterone, insulin, in order to be able to make sure that whatever demand you were putting upon it, it would get stronger and be able to manage that load. So it's important that we pursue exercise in the sense of progressive overload, so then that way we encourage as much protein synthesis on our body as possible. Maintaining a high level of protein synthesis will prevent the muscles from going catatonic and being essentially wasted away, eaten away by your metabolism, because the body no longer requires it. One of the things about having a large amount of muscle, it is actually very expensive to house on the body. I don't remember the exact numbers. I believe it's about 75 calories to 150 calories per pound of lean tissue. If it's just muscle on the body, let alone whether or not that muscle is actually active. So the body is always trying to do less for more. I mean, it like if you've ever experienced caloric restriction in order to get down to single digit body fat, what ends up happening is that you have restricted your calories so much and that you have done so much activity that the body will actually start slowing down the process of you even going pee, because just getting up to go to the washroom is too much work, and it's trying so hard to preserve itself. It's actually a really shitty experience. I don't invite it to anybody, and I mean, if you're a competitive bodybuilder, by all means go ahead, but once again, not idealistic, and there's absolutely nothing healthy about that at all. So once again, the body is always trying to do less for more. And this is where, if you have a whole bunch of muscle that you're just not using, the body over time will just start going catatonic and taking it away. This is what happens to older aged men and women, because they end up being maybe really active in their 30s and 40s, and then they kind of slow down out of whatever reason, life and injury excuses, so on and so forth, and they end up sitting for a long period of time, and then over time their bodies just get weaker and weaker and weaker. So this is why I invite people to do strength training, because it prevents those aspects and the risk of higher level of injury, because we're just living sedentary lives. In no way do I wish to sell to somebody that if they perform the squat or the overhead press or the deadlift or something like that, they're going to be more functional than the next person. What I can say is that you're definitely going to be stronger than somebody who doesn't do those activities, particularly with weight and the barbell. But, once again, this concept of functional training, it just doesn't exist. And it's completely different from one person to the next. So if you're finding yourself really pursuing what you believe is a functional program, and someone's trying to sell you on that ideology, what I want you to take from this conversation today is to just remember to leave your mind open, and that you are going to only be as good as that. You're only going to be as good at what you practice, and that's it. And I mean, maybe that's why, in the past, when I was learning about personal training and strength training and so on and so forth, they would always recommend a well-rounded fitness program. So for example, biking, swimming, running, weightlifting, so on and so forth. So then that way you had a well-rounded toolkit. I personally don't train that way. I do activities that I enjoy. I focus on just doing what I love, as opposed to trying to, put a food in my diet that I absolutely hate, because of the belief that it's the healthiest thing, and that's the thing that's gonna prevent me from dying and aging and so on and so forth. I think, to me, that's just another form of insanity. I say just do what you love, and make sure that it's done safely. Make sure that there's a balance in your life. If you really don't identify with weightlifting, and it's really crappy, and you don't enjoy it whatsoever, and you can't maintain it, but you enjoy, say, body weight exercises or yoga, or using a TRX system, and that's the level of fitness that you're willing to go through, well, then do that, and just focus on that, and just try to find ways to create progressive overload within that. Now, what I will say is that if you're knocking out 50 squats at the same body weight, and you all of a sudden do 51 more squats, does that mean that you've gotten stronger? No, you've just gotten better at lactic acid threshold and the ability to manage that lactic acid demand, but the body weight hasn't changed, right? Like nothing in the force production realm has gotten stronger for you. You're still only squatting 150 pounds current body weight, but if you add on 2.5 pounds to 5 pounds onto your squat, have you gotten stronger? Yes, in the sense of force production, right? So what I do like to say to clients who only do body weight exercises, find ways to incorporate weight into them, so then that way you can create a higher level of protein synthesis, to be able to encourage growth by loading the spinal cord, because that's going to ultimately yield I believe it will yield greater results, hormonally, emotionally, physically, so on and so forth. Now, I'm not a scientist, and of course I'm sure you can dig around on the YouTube and on the internet there to find out different contradictions to what I just said, and that's absolutely fine. And that's kind of the cool thing here about universal strength, that I actually want every single person to do. In no way do I think that I know it all. I don't want to act as if I've got life figured out, that I've got some secret pill to offer you that's going to make fitness easier or strength training easier or whatever. But what I will say is that, personally, I believe that pursuing strength should be the priority of your program, that you should be training towards the ideologies of getting stronger, so then that way you just reduce the chances of losing bone density, losing muscle mass, so on and so forth. And I don't believe that functional training is a word that can fit into the industry, because once again, how do we define that for an individual? Anyway, you guys, that's my rant for today. Thanks so much for joining me here at Universal Strength. If you have any questions or anything that you would be interested in talking about, please feel free to reach out to me down below. I also have a website called universalstrength.com. You guys are welcome to shoot me an email from that location there, and I'll be sure to answer any of your questions that you might have. Once again, I really appreciate you, and don't forget, transcend today for better tomorrows.